All I did was cast a line, and suddenly I was the villain. Out of nowhere, there she was, waving a pink slip like it was a death warrant, pointing at a sign that hadn't even existed the day before. And the way she said aesthetic integrity, as if those words mattered more than my right to fish, made my blood boil. You know what I mean? It felt less like rules, more like a setup, like someone had been waiting, watching, ready to pounce the second I breathed wrong. Tell me in the comments if this sounds as crazy to you as it did to me. The morning started out perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. The kind of June day where the air smells like pine needles and promise, and the lake is so still it looks like hammered silver. For 2 years, I'd been running my little fishing outfitter business out of this old cabin, teaching kids how to cast, and helping weekend warriors connect with the water. It's not fancy, but it's honest. That morning, I set up my gear on the dock, checked my microbarbed lure, just like Grandpa taught me, and cast out toward the deep water near the fallen log. First tug. Nothing huge, just enough to make me grin, when her voice cut through the calm like a chainsaw through Sunday meditation. Paula Green, HOA president, self-proclaimed guardian of community standards, was storming down from her perfect lawn, dressed in khakis and a silk scarf that probably cost more than my grocery bill. But it wasn't the outfit. It was the teal sign she pointed at, fresh as a just unwrapped Christmas toy. Lake Aesthetics Committee, it read. No barbed hooks. Catch and release only. That sign looked newer than the coffee in my mug, gleaming with hardware store shine. I hadn't seen it the day before, or even last week, when I'd taken the Thompson kids out for their first cast. But here was Paula, gripping that pink citation like the founding fathers had handed it to her. She stopped 10 feet from the dock, close enough to make her point, far enough to stay professional. Victor Hale, her loyal clipboard carrier, trailed behind, nodding like a dashboard bobblehead. You're in violation of community fishing regulations, Paula intoned, as if reading scripture. Appendix E of the Lake Aesthetics Charter clearly states, only barbless hooks in community waters. The lure you're using has microbarbs, which disrupts the ecosystem and compromises our lake's aesthetic integrity. I glanced at the tiny fish dangling from my line, not sure whether to laugh or snap. I'd been fishing these waters 2 years, using the same gear, following the rules. Suddenly, I was an environmental terrorist, public enemy number 1, because of metal points smaller than a splinter. Beauty is more important than crude hooks, Paula declared, and I swear, my eye twitched. Did she just say that? Here I am teaching kids the wonder of fishing, and she's acting like I'm dumping toxic waste. I almost signed the citation. $50 isn't the end of the world. But the smugness in her eyes, and the way she kept glancing at that suspiciously new sign, made me pause. There was something theatrical about the whole thing, like she'd rehearsed this confrontation in her bathroom mirror. So instead of signing, I took out my phone and scanned the QR code on the sign. The PDF it pulled up, created at 2:37 a.m. that same morning. While I was dreaming about catching smallmouth, someone was writing new laws and nailing them up before sunrise. The editing history showed frantic late-night changes, like someone desperately trying to get the language just right before dawn. You can't just invent rules at 3 in the morning and expect them to be law by breakfast. HOA rules require notice, a vote, due process. So I looked Paula in the eye and said, hold on. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding. HOA violations are supposed to come with notice, hearings, an appeal, not a sidewalk court. She actually laughed, like I'd told a cute joke. Victor fidgeted with his clipboard, clearly uncomfortable. The fine is $50, and confiscation is immediate under emergency aesthetic provisions, Paula said, grabbing for my rod, as if she were a cop seizing contraband. Emergency aesthetic provisions. I'd never heard of such a thing, and I'd read every HOA document when I bought this place. She was acting like a federal marshal, and I started to wonder how many other midnight rules were lurking on the HOA website. Restrictions on mailbox color, lawn height, gnome displays. I stepped back, took photos of the sign, the citation, and screenshots of that PDF's suspicious timestamps. The whole thing felt like a fever dream, like I'd woken up in a world where my tackle box was a weapon. Maybe I should have just paid and left it, but this wasn't about fishing anymore. It was about whether someone could change the rules in the dark and expect us to follow them in the light. Paula gave me 24 hours to pay or face further enforcement. The irony, She threatened legal action over rules made in secret, violating every legal channel. I watched her and Victor march off, plotting their next move. That afternoon, I dug through every policy on the HOA site. What I found? Disturbing. New rules appearing overnight. Emergency parking restrictions at 1:42 a.m., landscaping changes at 3:15, pool hours updated at 2:58. Paula was running a midnight legislature, cranking out rules when everyone was asleep. Was Victor in on it? Or just following orders? Most alarming. How many people had been cited for breaking rules that didn't exist 12 hours earlier? Next morning, wired on too much coffee and not enough sleep, I parked myself at Riverside Coffee, papers spread out like evidence at a trial. Every document told the same story. Midnight policies, no votes, no notice, just emergency this and aesthetic that. That's when I overheard Paula and Victor chatting 2 tables over, discussing how nobody had checked the actual lake property records in years, how the HOA just assumed ownership because nobody ever challenged it. Perception of authority is as effective as real authority, Victor chuckled. My jaw nearly hit the table. So I called my brother Noah. He's a real estate videographer, detail-oriented, suspicious by nature. Bring your surveyor gear, I texted. That afternoon, Noah and I started pulling old stakes, overlaying county records with GPS data. Sure enough, the boundaries didn't quite match up. Paula and Victor showed up, defensive as cats in a room full of rocking chairs. This is going to take more research than one afternoon, Noah told them, showing county records full of gaps and missing signatures. That night, I realized the rabbit hole went even deeper. Late-night policies, uncertain lake ownership, and now the real possibility that Paula's authority was a house of cards built on nothing but confidence and midnight PDFs. Next day, Mrs. Anderson showed up at my cabin, clutching a thick folder. I've been watching Paula for months, she told me, spreading out letters, emails, and a color-coded timeline of violations. She came after my garden, my grandkids, even threatened liens on our cabin. The pattern was unmistakable. Overnight policies, fines for aesthetic violations that didn't exist in the bylaws, intimidation, and threats. Mrs. Anderson's evidence wasn't just about gardens. It covered everything: parking, swimming, landscaping. She's making up rules for property she doesn't even control. She laughed, finally able to see the irony. She showed me board minutes that didn't exist, receipts for landscaping at Paula's own home, even consultation fees paid to her brother-in-law's company, all funded by resident fees. The more we uncovered, the more systematic it looked. Intimidation, selective enforcement, money funneled to friends and family. All that on top of fake property authority. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. Legal threat, courtesy of Paula and her lawyers. Tortious interference, community disruption, $250 in fines and admin costs. All the intimidation language you'd expect. She read it aloud on my porch, neighbors watching, hoping I'd cave. But I was more angry than scared now. So I called Lena Shaw, the sharp real estate attorney who'd handled my purchase. Lena laughed her way through the letter. "This is theater," she said. "You can't be sued for asking questions or for demanding documents. It's a bluff." Paula just overplayed her hand. While Lena confirmed Paula's threats were empty, Mrs. Anderson went door to door with her evidence. Turns out, almost everyone had stories about Paula's overreach. Parking tickets for cars that hadn't moved in weeks, lawn violations that didn't match any standard, fines for rules that weren't written anywhere. Within days, Mrs. Anderson had a petition with 47 signatures, over half the community. People lined up at the community hall to sign in public, refusing to be bullied anymore. The energy in the room was electric, frustration boiling over into cheers. Paula, of course, retaliated, issuing emergency violations to anyone who signed the petition: parking, lawn, swimming. But this just fired people up. Mrs. Anderson documented every new citation, showing the retaliation in real time. The momentum shifted. Lena dug into county records and uncovered something Paula probably never expected. The lake bed, it turns out, wasn't owned by the HOA at all, never properly transferred from the quarry company. Worse, the county had classified it as abandoned property due to unpaid taxes. The next tax lien auction was in 3 weeks. If we could form a community trust and bid, we could buy the lake bed outright. turned Paula's assumed authority into actual resident ownership. We got organized fast. Lake Wedge Trust was born. We prepped for the auction like it was the Super Bowl, neighbors crowding the community center, watching the county livestream. Paula tried to stop us, arguing to the county clerk that residents had no standing to bid. Margaret, the clerk, shot her down in front of everyone. Any qualified bidder can participate. You don't get special rights because you don't like the competition. That alone was worth every sleepless night. When the lot for the lake bed finally came up, a developer tried to outbid us, but the community rallied, stretching the budget, pooling resources, until the gavel fell in our favor. The place erupted. Cheers, hugs, relief. Paula slipped out the back, her kingdom crumbling with every cheer. The trust meant no more midnight PDFs, no more surprise rules, just bylaws hammered out in the open. Mrs. Anderson was already planning the first official picnic on the now community-owned lake. But Paula wasn't done. Days later, she showed up waving her latest emergency policy, declaring the lake a no-fishing zone for safety reasons. But this time I was ready. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from her first visit. Beauty is more important than crude hooks. Now, she claimed safety mattered most. The contradiction was obvious, and the neighbors saw it too. Mrs. Anderson arrived with a full audit. Bank statements showing resident fees used for Paula's personal landscaping, overpriced buoys, ghost consulting firms. The vote to demand Paula's resignation was nearly unanimous. Even her allies dropped their eyes. She packed up and left, her power dissolved by a stack of documents and a crowd who finally stood together. The permission ledger system we built, wristbands for activities, QR signups, open meetings, worked better than anyone hoped. Kids fished, families picnicked, the community actually governed itself, out in the open, without fear of surprise citations. Neighbors who'd paid bogus fines got reimbursed, and even Mr. Hoffman, who'd once been too scared to speak up, came to thank me, $50 in hand. We built new traditions, spring fishing clinics, summer cookouts, fall harvests, all coordinated by the people, for the people. The ledger became a symbol, thicker each week, showing that real authority comes from trust and transparency, not intimidation. Paula eventually moved away, justice through consequences, not revenge. The HOA board brought in Sarah, who took notes at our gatherings, planning to model other amenities after our ledger system. If you'd told me one fishing citation would turn into a new era of real community, I'd have laughed. Now, the permission ledger sits on a weatherproof stand. The picnic area is always full, and every season brings another chapter in how ordinary people can turn intimidation into cooperation. So let me ask you, if your HOA tried to control a lake they never owned, what would you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your wildest HOA stories. And if you got a kick out of this saga, don't forget to hit like, share, and debate what real justice looks like in a community. Thanks for hearing me out. May your lake stay calm, and your neighbors stay honest.